people gathered here like this, alcoholics, I always think that we always miss a good opportunity. We ought to have the chief of police here tonight and just ask him very quietly after a little bit, what would you do if they all took a drink? That is very, very comical when you think about it. It's very... And it actually happened. I did that up in Canada one time, and I think he passed out. I know he was quite disturbed. And I would like to tell you a little story before I start here about old Mary over in Ireland. She was a lovely old woman, but she was married to a boozer. And one day she went up to the priest and she said, "Father, he's drunk again." And the priest said, "Oh my God, no." And she said, "Yeah, he's drunk again. And I don't know what that I'm going to do." And the priest said, "Well, Mary, neither do I. We've done everything with that man, and he's drunk again." And then he had an idea. He said, "Don't you live in a little house down the end of the lane?" And she said, "That's right." "And there's bushes on each side?" She said, "That's right, Father, yes, yes." And he said, "Well, tonight, get out there in the bushes at night, before he comes home, put a white sheet over your head. And when he comes down the lane, jump out and scare him. Shake your arm. Say, 'Yee, I'm the devil, I'm the devil.'" So the poor old soul, there she is out there in the weeds at midnight. And here's himself, comes down the highway, hitting both sides, and he's got his hat on the back of his head, and he's laughing and singing and having a ball. And she jumps out like the priest told her to do. "Wee, I'm the devil, I'm the devil." And he rears back and he says, "Ah, let me shake your hand. I married your sister." And that same cop was down driving his car one day, and he was bombed. And there was a fellow stopped at the red light, and the priest come up and bashed him in the back. He never even saw him. And there was an Irish cop standing on a corner. He heard the bang, and he went over. He looked in the second car, and he saw that it was a priest. And he said, "God, good morning, Father." He says, "How fast was he going when he backed into you?" We came here, Wendy and I, my wife, we came here from Australia, West Australia, Aurelia, very lovely place. No kangaroos in the main street, but they're there. They have a lot of them. And we came over here by way of Hong Kong. We spent a couple of days in Hong Kong to rest up, because that was an 8-hour flight. And when we were in Hong Kong, we saw a bunch of people that were demonstrating because they didn't want to leave Hong Kong when the Chinese took over again. And you know, I looked out my window of the hotel and I was watching all these poor people, and they were quite disturbed because in a couple of years Hong Kong is going to be turned back to the Chinese. And I said, I remember very clearly how it struck me how fortunate that we people are to be living in places that are so free. And we alcoholics particularly, we are very fortunate people. And we left Hong Kong and I came over here. We stopped in Vancouver and then we stopped somewhere else and somewhere else. And finally we wound up here in... where are we? Yeah. We wound up in Maine in the airport, wherever it was, I don't know. And a very lovely lady in a very funny hat came and met us. Yeah. And the gentleman that was with her, Don, he took us home, and we're staying with them people now. And I want to just now say thank you to Don and to Ricky, because Don shares his porridge with me every morning, and Ricky shares her AA with me in the afternoon, and we're having a ball. And I want to say thank you. And let me tell you a couple of stories there, because I don't want anybody to think that, you know, I'm a very miserable person or I'm a very unhappy person. Nothing could be further from the truth. I could stand here for the next 2 hours and have you rolling in the aisles, I'll tell you. I'm a very happy guy. But that's not the purpose of my visit. The purpose of my visit is to talk to you about what happened to me, what happened and what it was like and what it's like now. And I don't know how I get around to these places at all. I really don't, but I do know why. And the reason for my being here is because my friend upstairs wants me to be here. And I have no doubt in this world about that. Everything that I do is guided by my friend upstairs, because I put myself at his disposal some 42 years ago when I came into Alcoholics Anonymous. And it has been that way. I should not be here, actually. I should be dead and buried or in a madhouse. That was the prognosis that was given to me some 5 years before I came into Alcoholics Anonymous. And I don't want anyone ever to think that I'm something special. I'm not. I'm just another drunk, a very fortunate drunk who was very fortunate in being able to get to Alcoholics Anonymous. And in 42 years ago, it was quite a different story when I arrived. Getting to Alcoholics Anonymous was quite a difficult chore in some instances. There was not as many groups, each one around the corner near your home, and it was not quite that way. But anyway, let me start. Every story has a beginning, and every story has a middle, and every story has the end. And let me start at the beginning. I was not born different than anybody else. I had a mother and I had a father, and I knew both of them very well. And I think for a little while they both liked me, and everything was going good, because here was a new son and I was one of 9 children. And right there, the similarity to a happy family stops, because my father was an alcoholic. And actually I could stop there and say, well, now you all know what that means, but I won't do that, because to me it was a very personal thing. I was born an alcoholic. And a lot of people say, well, I wasn't. And I shouldn't say really that I was born an alcoholic. What I should say is that I was born with the chemical body of an alcoholic. I was born with the chemical body of a human being that was predisposed to be an alcoholic when I took a drink. And what that means is that my body chemistry is such that it's like a fuse waiting to be lit. And the first drink is the one that lights the fuse, and the fuse burns as long as that it is, and then the inevitable explosion. And that's the story of my life. When I say I was born an alcoholic, I didn't develop the disease. I had it when I was born. And the way that I figure that now is because of what the doctors have taught me. And the doctors have taught me that the first and foremost manifestation of my disease is ungrounded and unfounded fear. And that's what I was born with. Ungrounded, unfounded fear. And when my mother used to say, go to bed, Jack, and turn out the light, I couldn't. I had to leave the light lit. And when mother woke me up in the morning and told me to go to school, I would get halfway to school, and I would throw up, and I would run home again. And when I did finally one day get to school, the nuns scared me to death. They frightened me to death. And when anybody would say to me, Jack, what is this or what is that, I couldn't answer. I couldn't speak. And I used to be so petrified with fear, it was unbelievable. And I went on like this, and the biggest fear in my life was my father. And my father was an alcoholic, and he was a very fine man. Except the usual story, a very nice fellow, but he drinks too much. And that was the story of my father. And when he came home drunk, I was petrified. I would run and I would hide. And we lived in a little house, and there was a basement down in the basement, and there was a boiler, and I used to get down in behind the boiler where nobody could reach me. And I would stay in behind that boiler maybe a day or 2 days until somebody finally would coax me out by telling me that my father was sober and it was okay to come out, because I was deathly afraid of him. And the idea was that my mother, she was another problem in my life as a kid, because I loved her so much. And when I used to see her being abused by my father, it used to tear me up inside, and I'd begin to hate. And I began to hate at a very early age, and by the time I think I was 6 years old, I would have nothing to do with my father. If he called me over and asked me to sit on his lap, I would say, no, I don't like you. You're a liar. And I would call him a liar and tell him that you're not right. And I used to ask my mother, I said, Mom, when I get big, if I get some money with you and I'm going to buy a little house in Jersey. How about you and me? We go out and live there. And she'd say, all right, Jack. And I'd say, we won't take none of these other dummies either, will we? And she'd say, no, just you and me. And I said, the old man, we leave him too. Oh, yeah, we'll leave him, Jack. And you know, that was my dream, to wake up one morning and find I had enough money to buy a little house in Jersey so I could live with my mother. Never came to pass, of course. Now, I was one of 9 children, and I'm the only one that was affected by the disease of alcoholism. My father was an alcoholic, I'm an alcoholic, and my eldest son is an alcoholic. And I'm very happy to say that tonight I was very much surprised that the other day, because I turned around and there was my eldest son came up to meet me here, and he's here today, and he's celebrating 3 years pretty soon. And I'm very happy about that. Everything in my life was turmoil. I couldn't understand why that I couldn't be like my brother and be like my sister. My mother always told me, Jack, just be like your brother, you're all right. She never had time for me. I'd say, Mom, why this, why that? And she'd say, oh, don't worry about it, just be like your brother, you'll be all right. I couldn't be like my brother. My brother was a very normal person. He went to school, he got good grades, he came home, he hung his clothes up when he came home from school. He did his homework, his books were always neat, and I was always the other way. I could never find my shoes. I was a mess. I was a terrible mess. But make everything change for me at age 12. Because at age 12, my father had come home one night on a Friday night, and when he came home, he was drunk, and it was one of those long weekends coming up, you know, where the man goes into bed and everything is hush, hush, be quiet, don't wake him up, maybe he'll sleep, maybe it won't be too bad when he wakes up. And I knew what it was going to be, another terrible long weekend waiting to see if he'd go to work Monday morning. And what happened was that particular Saturday morning, the next day, he was still sleeping. My mother told my brother and I to go into the bedroom and don't make any noise and play there, because we couldn't go out in the street. It was raining too hard. So we went in the bedroom and we played in the bedroom, and I don't know what we played. We just sat there. I sat there with a belly full of fear, waiting for my father to wake up, see what was going to happen. And my brother was one of them kids. He was 10 years old. I was 12 years old, and I was going on 40. And he was just 10. And he was a kid. And he was under the bed, and he was rooting about, and he come out with a jug of wine. A 1-gallon jug of wine. And he said to me, look what I found. And I said, what is that, stupid? And he said, it's what Pop drinks. He said, what do you think? Well, you ought to try some? And he took the cork out of the bottle, and he smelt it, and he said, it smells sweet. What do you say we, have a little bit? And I said, no, don't bother me, go away. Well, he took the first drink, and he kept telling me how sweet it was and how nice it was. And the next thing you know, I said, give me that damn thing here and let me see what it's all about. So I took my first drink at age 12, and it wasn't a bottle of wine. It was a bottle of magic. Because with that first drink, all my fears for the past 12 years disappeared. And I looked at that bottle in amazement. I said, my God, no wonder the old man's always sipping on this stuff, you see. And my brother said, let's have another drink. And I said, by all means, let's do. So we had a second drink. And I said a little bit later, let's have another one, Joe. And he said, no, if you drink any more of that, Jack, you're going to get sick. And I said, you're out of your stupid mind. I said, if the Lord made anything better than this, he must have kept it up there because it's not here. And I looked at that bottle, and I took a third drink. And the next thing you know, it was Sunday morning, and my mother was waking me up. And she was crying very bitterly. And I said, Mom, what happened? What's wrong? And I sat up in the bed like a scared deer. And she said to me, oh, Jack, I don't know what that I'm going to do. She said, I got your father, and now I got you. And I said, what do you mean? I said, what happened? I couldn't remember what happened. And she said, yesterday was Saturday, and you went in the bedroom with your brother, and you found a bottle of wine, and you drink almost 3/4 of a gallon. And she said, you know something, you went in the bathtub, you tried to take a bath, and instead of taking a bath, you passed out and you almost drowned, and we had to break your door down to get you out. And they pulled me out of the bathtub and put me in bed, and I slept all night. I don't remember a thing about it, but I do remember the look on my mother's face, and she said, please, God, please, Jack, for the love of God, no more, I can't handle 2. And I said, Mom, stop crying, there ain't going to be no more, that's it, it was a mistake, I made a boo-boo, and I said it won't happen again. And while I was telling that to my mother and convincing her that I was not going to drink anymore, I was planning on how to get more. Now, I was 12 years old, and I was an altar boy, and I was an Irish Catholic. And if you're an Irish Catholic and an altar boy, you can have a good drink anytime you want. And I had some very lovely drinks in the sacristy. I got the early Mass, and I would get there early before the priest, and I would set the bottles out and have a few fast belts. Then I would be able to go to school, and instead of sitting in the back of the room, I would be right up in the front, and I would tell the nun some morning, "Sister, why don't you sit in my seat and let me take over the class?" And that nun was amazed at the difference in that dumb boy that used to sit in the back. She used to ask me, "Has the cat got your tongue?" And I say, "Someday I'm going to get this, I'm going to belt her in her mouth." Oh, it used to get me so furious. But now with a drink in me, I was all right. But I had problems even then. Sometimes I would get there and I used to meet alcoholic priests. He'd be there already. And that morning I wouldn't get anything to drink. And the next thing you know, I'd be in the back of the room again, and the nun would be asking me, "What's the matter? Has the cat got your tongue?" And you see, this was the yo-yo that my life was. Up and down, dependent on alcohol. Now, 3,000 years ago, the Chinese had a perfect description of the disease of alcoholism. They said that the man takes a drink, and then the drink takes a drink, and then the drink takes the man. And that's what happened to me. Because when I was 15 years of age, my mother came into the house one morning and found me sitting at a table with a gun on the table and a bottle of whiskey and a whole roll of stolen money. And I was offering her some, and I was telling my father, "Now, why don't you just take one of my drinks, Pop? Or why don't you take one of my dollars, and I'll blow your damn head right off." And my mother looked at me and she said, "My God." And she took me by the back of the neck and she pitched me out the door and she said, "Don't come back. I don't know where I ever got you." She said, "You've done nothing in this world but hurt me from the moment that you were born." And she said, "Take your filthy money and your whiskey and your gun and get out of my life, and I don't want to see you anymore." I was only but 15 years of age. And from that point on in my life, it was a disaster. Because I went out and found a bunch of people. I had found a bunch of people that were very nasty people. And I've done a lot of nasty things in my life, believe me. I ran around with these guys when I was... And I was a wheelman for a mob down in the west side of New York. And I operated quite well. Except one problem that I had. After every morning that I woke up, I was always back to being a 12-year-old scared kid. I used to sit on the end of my bed and I'd say, "My God, what am I doing now?" Because I never knew what had happened the night before. And I used to feel for my gun and see if I'd smell it and see if I had fired it. And I'd feel in my pockets for money, see if I had any, and generally I had. I never knew where it came from, really. And then the third thing I would do, I would reach out and I would take a drink because I couldn't stand that 12-year-old scared kid. And that's all that I was, all my life, a 12-year-old scared kid. And I would sit on the end of the bed and I would cry, and I wouldn't know what was going on. And a little while later I would call up and I would start making inquiries around, and what did we do last night and how did it go? And one day they said to me, "Jack, I don't understand you. You asking how did it go? You drove the car. Don't you know how it went?" And I said, "Yeah, but I was busy." And they said, "Well, Christ, we were busy too, but we know how we..." So I lost my first job on account of alcohol. And they told me to get lost and go out somewhere and louse up some other bunch. They said, "You know, you might take us to a police station one night. You don't know what the hell you're doing." So I left that job and I went out on my own, and I got in a bunch more trouble. I got in more trouble. The word went around in New York, if it was raining soup, that Jack would be out with a fork. And that's about the way that it was, too. And my name was Jack, Crazy Jack. Crazy Jack the Umbriago. And Umbriago is Italian for drunkard. And I used to laugh, you know, when everybody called me Crazy Jack, and when there was a quiet time around in the bars that we hung in, people used to say, "Well, let's give Jack a drink and see what he does next," you see, because that was me. Anything went when the whistle blew. It was just, and I never knew what happened. I always wound up in jail on the outside looking in, and I wound up in a lot of nasty scrapes, and I wound up in a lot of trouble. And I had gotten married around that time, And after about a year of being married, my wife said to me one day, she said, Jack, when do you go back to work? And I looked at her because I had told her I was on vacation, you see. And she said, you've been on vacation for a long time. And I said, well, yeah, but don't worry about it. You know, as long as you got money, you're all right. And that was okay. I put her off a little bit. And it was a sad day in my life then when she actually found out what was going on. And from that day on, she looked at me very strangely. She said, you drink too much. And I said, don't ever pick on my drinking. Leave me alone. See, I need this stuff. Because if I don't have this to drink, then I can't walk across the street. I can't do anything. I can't, never mind, stick up a joint. I can't do anything. I can't even walk across the street without a drink. And that's about the situation, the way that it was. I couldn't do anything without a drink. So she looked at me and I looked at her, and my son was born around that time, the older boy there that's sitting in the back. And things to me, the chronological order in my life is very poor. I can't remember which came first, and it's all mixed up in my head. Because as you'll hear, I had a lot of problems with alcohol. And I did a lot of damage to my head. Very, very, very strong damage. And that came a little bit later because I did go to sea for a while during the war because I couldn't do anything else. I went to war to get away from my wife. And I sailed on tankers. And it was not a pleasant job. It was not a nice job at all. And I didn't care. It was either that or wake up in the morning and have my wife looking at me when I took a drink. And no matter where that I was, it seemed to me that her eyes were always on me. And I felt so guilty and so dirty. And I'd say, what are you looking at? She'd say, nothing much. And I went down the basement to drink. I went up on the roof to drink. I went everywhere, but everywhere I went, there she was. And I knew that something was wrong, but I was sure that one day I was going to be able to find out how to drink without getting in trouble. And I went to bartenders and I asked them, what do I do? And they said, well, you take a little olive oil before you drink, and that'll do it. And that didn't work. I got just as drunk and just as sick and in trouble. And then they said, well, don't eat before you drink. And then they said, eat before you drink. And they told me everything except freeze it and eat it. And the result was always the same. And I used to back off and I'd look at it and I'd say, I'm going to get a few bucks together, I'm going to take another run at it. You see, because my brother always told me, Jack, why don't you take 2 drinks and go home? Be like me. And I tried to be like him. And that's all. I didn't want to be like my father. That was what it was. And if I admitted that I couldn't drink, I was like that bum that was my father. And I call him a bum because at that time, that's what I considered him. I considered him to be a nothing. And I had a lot of trouble there with my father, and I thank fortunate and I thank God that I never killed him. Because I used to go around when I was drunk and I'd have waving guns about and would try to get for my brothers and my sisters where that he lived. And nobody would ever tell me, and I thank God for that. Because I'm sure in my crazy mind I would have done something very desperate. But anyway, I went to sea and I thought everything was fine because I used to take as much booze as that I could. I never took any clothes. I just took booze. And I would try to make it last from there to there, wherever we happened to be going. And it never did. I always ran out. And what a horrible feeling it is to be in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean with guys shooting torpedoes at you and no booze. Jesus. I had the worst drinks I ever had in my life was on them ships. And I had a little trouble there too because I got torpedoed a couple of times. And the first time was not very nice. I was standing on the stern of the ship looking out at the water, drinking a cup of coffee, black coffee with a shot of booze in it. And the next thing you know, I was in the water. And I said, Jesus, what happened? The guy next to me had a life jacket and I didn't. He let me hold on to his. And I said, where'd the ship go? He said, straight down, 3 miles. And I said, hey, my bottle's on there. He said, well, you can't get it now. And I said, what happened? He said, we got torpedoed, boom. And I said, who did that? Why would they want to do that, you see? And he explained to me that it was a war on, you see. And I said, gee, a guy could get hurt over here. And after about 17 hours in the water, they picked us up and they put us in a little place over there in England, Ellesmere. And I had a ball over there, really. Every day I went up to the U.S. consul and I asked for some money, and he said, "You were here yesterday." I said, "What has it got to do with it? I need some more." So he give me more money and I'll go out and get drunk, and I had everybody. I was billeted with a family over there, and the woman played the piano, and we used to have a sing-song every night, and it was beautiful. She had a little daughter, and the daughter's name was Kitty. And the mother used to say, "Kitty," and the daughter used to say, "Whatty?" And I thought that was the greatest, you see. And then one day I went up to the consul, and he said, "Hey, buddy, you've had it, no more." He said, "Now I'll tell you what we're going to do." He said, "We're going to give you a flight back to the States, or we're going to give you another ship. What do you want?" And I thought of my wife's eyes, And I thought of getting torpedoed again, and I said, "Well, I'll tell you what I'll do. Give me another ship." So they give me another ship and some money, and away we went. I wound up several years later in the harbor of New York City on a hospital ship, and I'll never forget it. My head was a mess. I had been in a coma for 16 days. I had gone into a prisoner of war camp in Germany, and I took on 5,000 German prisoners of war. And what they did to me was a disgrace, I'll tell you. But anyway, that was it. Coast Guard came, took my papers, and they said, "Now, no more for you. You've had it. You are suffering from psychoneurosis complicated by acute alcoholism." And I said, I don't mind. I'm crazy, I know that. I said, "But don't you call me an alcoholic." You see, I wanted to fight the doctor. But anyway, I went home, and I went home to a wife that I didn't know. And I went home to that little guy sitting in the back there. And I opened the apartment door. He was just an infant, a little baby. And he cried like mad. And I said, "Shut that damn kid up, would you?" And when I opened the door, I rang the bell. She came running and she said, "Oh, you're home." And I said, "Yeah, give me a drink." And she said, "Jack, I don't have anything here. I don't drink." I said, "Well, run downstairs and get some." And she did like a little Chinese girl. She run down the stairs, She come back with a bottle, and I said, "Now take that damn kid and go over to your mother's. And when I want some more whiskey, I'll call you." And I sat looking out of a window over Brooklyn. And I fought the war all over again, day by day. And I sat there, and I didn't go out of the house, and I didn't bathe, and I didn't shave, and I didn't do nothing. I just sat there drinking. And then one day she said to me, "Hey, Jack, no more. You've had it. That's it. I'm not going to kill you, and you're killing yourself, and I don't want to do that." And so she wouldn't buy me any more. She said, "If you want any more, you go get it yourself." So I had a problem, because I couldn't walk in the streets. There were people there, you see, and they looked at me. And I thought everybody was talking about me. And I said, "This is terrible." And, I had to sneak out in the middle of the night when nobody was on the streets and try and buy myself a bottle if I had the money. And then one day she said to me, "Jack, I want to help you. I want to take you to AA." She said, "They'll help you." And I said, "Well, how will they help me?" She said, I don't know, but I'll take you if you want to go." And you see, I lived in Brooklyn, and there was no meetings there, and we had to go to New York on a subway. And I said, "Hey, Roz, I can't go on a subway." And she said, "I'll buy you a drink if you go." And I said, "Okay, I'll go." So she bought me a drink, and I got on the subway, and I shivered all the way under the water through the tunnel, and I was scared. I was petrified. I suffer very badly from claustrophobia even now, but then it was horrible. And when I get off, I was so frightened and scared and shaken, she bought me another drink. And with 2 drinks, I went into an AA meeting. And there was some damn fool up here like I am tonight, And I sat in the back and I said, "Hey, are you going to help me? I'm in a hurry." And somebody told me, "Be quiet, buddy." And I said, "Well, would you like to try and make me?" And then this guy up here, he said, "Don't take the first drink and you won't get drunk." And I said, "No kidding." And I asked them from the back of the room, did somebody tell you that, or did you figure it out all by yourself? Hell, I knew that. I knew that in Brooklyn. What the hell, I had to take a ride on the subway to hear that dummy. So my wife said, we better get out of here, they're going to call the police. And I said, I don't care who they call. I said, they're telling me jokes over here. I come here to get help and they're kidding with me. So I got out of there before the police arrived. And I told my wife that if I ever step foot in another AA meeting again, I'll have to be dead. That's about the way it was. My life at that point started to take on a very different, arrogant, nasty attitude, my ways. Because, I had a lot of trouble with police. A lot of trouble with them people. And they used to look at me and they'd just look at me and I'd say, what are you looking at? And the next thing you know, we'd be at it. And that doesn't happen even in Brooklyn. They don't like that too good. So what happened was that I got a big, tremendous, hard feeling against cops. And they come in the house a couple of times and they pushed me about because I was threatening my wife. And I had my mother-in-law one day. We had moved in with my mother-in-law. And I had her up against the wall and I had a straight razor at her throat. And I said, now you woke me up this morning with your washing pots. And I said, now I just want to see you go to sleep. Because if you do, I'm going to cut your damn throat for you. And my wife called the cops, you see. And the cops come in, took the razor away from me. And they said, we get any more out of you, you're going to have a little trouble. So then the next couple of days, I looked for those cops. And one day I found them. And that was a mistake. Because they pounded me real good. And we lived on the 6th floor. And they dragged me by my heels down from the 6th floor. And my head hit every step on the way down. And I bounced off them steps. And when I got down the bottom, I got up again. They took me in the back of the building and they were working me over. And I said to them, hey, why don't you just, take it easy. Let me get up and give me a fair chance, There was 3 of them. And they said, oh, you want to get up? And I said, yeah, I want to get up. And they said, we'd be better off if you stayed down. Because if you get up, we're going to half kill you. And I said, no, let me up. You can't do that to me. So I got up and they're right, they half killed me. And the next thing you know, I was in Kings County Hospital. And I was in a straitjacket in a mad ward. They call it the flight deck. And I was laying on a trolley there because they had no beds, and I was strapped to the trolley. And everybody that walked by, they just looked at me, and that was it. And both my jaws were wired together because they were both broken. And I had a big, about 200 stitches in my head. And all the fingers on my right hand were broken, and my left arm was broken. And my ribs were all caved in. And I had a big lump of blood in the back of my throat, and I couldn't spit it out because my jaws were wired together. And I want to tell you something. If you have never been in that position, don't be. Not nice. Terrible. And I lay there and I said, my God, what's happening to me now? What's happening? And I thought about things, and I was so sick and I was so frightened. And about 3 days later, they turned me loose, and I told my friend upstairs, I said, my God, if I ever get out of this one, never again. I'll never touch another drink. And about a week later, the doctor came in and he said, hey, we're going to turn you loose because this hospital is for sick people. And you're not sick, you're an alcoholic. And get out of here and don't come back, or we're going to send you so far away we'll never see you. So I went home. And I opened the door. My wife answered the door. She said, they let you out. I said, yeah. And she said, well, what are you going to do now? I said, I don't know. I really don't know. Because I still had my head in bandages. My arm was still in a sling from being broken. And I said, I don't know what's happening. And she said, well, I'll tell you something. You better do something because, we need some money around here. You got to get a job. You got to do something. And all I did was sit in the bedroom. I sat in the bedroom because someone might ring the phone. And if the phone rang, I would jump 40 feet. And if someone came to the door, I would run in again. And if the kids dropped a pot, I would go crazy. I needed a drink so bad I could taste it. But I was useless without a drink. And I told her, I said, Roz, I can't live like this. It's 3 days now. I can't even go out in the street. What are you doing to me? I said, please, for the love of God, give me $1. Just $1. I said, I'll go down a corner and I'll take a drink, 1 drink. That's all I want to settle my stomach, take that knot out of there. And I said, I'll have 1 drink and then I'll get on the subway. I'll go to New York and I'll get some kind of a job. So she said, I don't know, Jack. And finally she gave me the $1. And I went down the corner and I said, give me a drink. And the guy gave me a drink and he gave me the change. And I picked it up and I threw it down my throat because I needed it so bad. And I said, my God, what a relief. And it was like somebody turned a key, boop, in my head. Because now the thought was not have 1 drink and go get a job. The thought was now, if that woman hadn't called the cops on me, I wouldn't have went into the hospital, and it's her fault, not mine. Give me another drink. And I had a 2nd drink. And then I asked the bartender for $5. And he was afraid of me. He knew my reputation, and he gave it to me on 1 condition, that I drink it somewhere else. And then I started thinking about those 3 cops, you see. And I said, maybe I could find them again. Sensible people wouldn't think of that, but that was what came to me. So I went looking for the 3 cops that beat on me. And I don't know if I found them or I found 3 others, but I found cops. And I'm almost ashamed to say it, but I've been beat half to death 12 different times and stuffed in a straitjacket and put in madhouses 12 times. And each time that I got out, I swore, my God, there's going to be no more, that's it. And each time I got out, I went right back to the same thing. Because I said in the beginning here, my name is Jack Brennan and I'm an alcoholic. What do you expect? I can't live without a drink. So I went along my merry way, and the last time that I was taken out of Kings County Hospital or Bellevue, I'm not sure which, 2 detectives met me on the ground floor of the hospital, and they had what you call a sticker. That's a piece of paper. They turn you loose there, but they got you. So they said, Jack, you've got to come along with us. The man wants to see you. And I said, well, what does he want with me? I haven't done anything. He said, never mind. They want to see you. Come on. And I had a couple of dollars at that time in my pocket, and I asked them guys to let me get a drink. And generally they would. They're not too bad. If you buy them one, they'll let you have one. And so I went along and I asked them, would you let me have a drink before we go there? Because I was scared. I had a big knot of ice in my belly. Unbelievable. I was petrified. I didn't know what was coming. And they said, no, he wants you sober. He's got something to tell you. So I went to this courthouse, and my wife was there, and that boy in the back was there in her arms, and I stood there shaking and shivering, and the judge said to me, Jack, how do you feel? I said, fine, how do you feel? You see, because I'm an alcoholic, and I'm 2 people, and I was 2 people just like that. I was that 12-year-old scared kid like that, and I covered him up with a hard attitude on the outside. Nothing bothers me. But that's a lie. I was scared skinny. And I didn't know what to do. And I turned around and I saw my wife and I said, Roz, what are you doing to me here? She said, I'm going to tell you something, Jack. I'm going to raise this kid here, and you don't figure in here anywhere. We've done everything that we can do to help you to stop drinking, and you don't want to stop. Now the judge has something to say to you. And the judge said to me, I have your prognosis here from 3 very fine doctors. And they tell me that you are a homicidal maniac. And that you might wipe your family out overnight and not know that you did it. And he said that you're not going to be able to live for the next 5 years. And if you do, it'll be in a mental institution completely devoid of any brain. Because you're suffering very badly from brain damage due to beatings and alcohol. And he said, you're never ever going to work another day in your life. And it's also that it was impossible for me to tell the difference between right and wrong. Impossible. I didn't know. And it was highly recommended by these doctors that I be removed from my home for the protection of my family. And my wife then was in a family way with my daughter, my second born. And so I was taken down to the corner and thrown on the subway, and the two cops that took me down and threw me over the turnstile, they said, hey bum, don't come back, because we had you up to here. We had you here. And the next time that we have problems with you, we're going to kill you. We'll take you in the back and we'll beat you, but we'll get rid of you. We don't want you here in Brooklyn at all. Don't come back to Brooklyn. And I said, I'll be back. Don't you worry about that. I'll be back. And I got on that subway train, and I said to myself, it's only a big happy mistake. She loved me like she always does. She would never do this to me. It's only a temporary thing. And I said, I'll go to New York, and I'll go up on Mulberry Street, and I'll get me a gun, and I'll make a couple of scores, and I'll go to Turkish baths, and I'll buy a new suit, spend 3 or 4 days in the Turkish baths, and I'll come out, and I'll go home, and she'll love me like she always did. Now, see, we alcoholics, we live in Never Never Land, because that woman hated my guts. She hated my guts with a vengeance. Because you know, there's nothing more vicious in this world than a woman whose children are threatened. And I was threatening her children. And she told me before I left that court, she said, I want to tell you something. She said, I'm going to get you. If you come back near where I'm raising my children, I'll kill you, you bastard. Right in front of the judge. She said, I'll put a knife in your belly while you're sleeping, but I'm going to raise these kids, and I can't raise them with you. So get out of our lives and leave us alone. And she repeated almost word for word what my mother said. She said, you've done nothing for me except hurt me from the first moment that I met you. And I went out of that courtroom that day, and I was sick in my heart and my head. And I went to New York full of big ideas, and I was going to get a gun, and I was going to do this, and I did nothing. I didn't get up to Mulberry Street. Nobody knew me there anymore. Nobody would lend me a gun. Nobody would even spit at me. And I wound up on a Bowery in New York. In the Bowery in New York, you can live there in the streets, summer, winter, it doesn't matter. And if you die, it doesn't matter either, and nobody there will bother you. And every once in a while, some big fat cop would come along, and he'd roll me over with the toe of his shoe, and he said, get on the side, bum. Don't stop people from walking. And I would lay there, and I would say, if only I could get up. Oh, if only I could get up quick enough to get his gun, I'd take him with me when I went. Because I was one mass of hate. And you don't know any hate like I had. And if you walked past me and you had shoes on your feet, I'd spit at you. Because I had none. And I had dirty, filthy clothes, and I was full of body lice, and I was just one stinking mess. That's all that I was. And I would roam the streets, and I would raise up and fall down, and I fell down subway stairs and split my skull many times. I got hit with a bus one time. Another time I got hit with a trolley car and almost had lost my arm getting run over with a trolley car. And still in all I could feel was hate. And I hated my mother, and I hated my father, and I hated my brothers and my wife and my kids, and I hated everybody, and I particularly hated God. Oh, how I hated Him. And I used to wake up every morning, shake my fist at the sky, and I'd say, look what you did to me. And I'm the guy that used to sit between my mother and my father, keep them from hitting each other. And I'm the guy that wanted to live out in a little house in Jersey with my mother because I loved her so bad. And everything was in my life was upside down, and I didn't know what to do. And I wanted to kill somebody, and I wasn't strong enough or quick enough to do it. And then one day, things started to happen again. I went into a bar, and it was a filthy, dirty bar. I'm sure you wouldn't go in it. And I went into the filthy, dirty toilet that was in the filthy, dirty bar, and it was even worse. And I went in there because I always had to take my morning drink someplace where I could throw up. And I had a bottle of smoke. And if you don't know what smoke is, I'll tell you what it is. You buy a paint is alcohol. You buy a pint, and you get a quart bottle, and you mix it up with a pint of water. And you shake it up good. And if it comes out smoky, you can drink it. It'll tear the belly out of you, but it won't kill you. And if it comes out clear like water, throw it away. It's poison. So that's where I wound up drinking smoke. And this particular morning, I had a bottle of smoke with a few drinks in it. And I tried to take my morning drink. And up came my first drink, as it usually did. And the second and the third. And with the fourth one, half of my stomach come up too. And I had a beautiful case of hemorrhage of the stomach. And I was so sick and so weak that I fell down on my hands and knees in all the filth that was in that place. And I hung my chin on the bowl. And I looked into the bowl and I watched myself literally running down the toilet bowl. And every time I tried to take a drink, I threw up again. And finally, something came through. And I looked at the bottle I had in my hand and I said, God, I said, that's my trouble. And nobody could understand me, and I was spitting on everybody, and people pushed me and knocked me down. And they said, get the hell away from me, you drunken bum. But one person, and I don't know who to this minute that it was, stopped. And they said, you want to call AA? And I said, yeah, please. And she called AA. He, she, I don't know, somebody. Called AA, and they come back and told me, I've called them and they're coming. Sit there and don't move. And this person must have known the alcoholic because, you know, my mind could be here and my body could be over there. And my body could be over there and my mind could be here. I never knew. I was sick. So the woman said, or whoever it was said, don't move, just sit there and wait, they'll be here. And I sat there on my hands and I said, oh my God, are they coming, are they coming, are they coming, or am I hallucinating again? And they came. Here come my sponsor down the street, and he was about this big, and his wife was about that big. And he come up to me and he said, are you the fella that wants to go to AA? And I said, yeah, that's me. And he said, do you really want to be sober? And I said, yeah, I do. And you know something? He got up real close to me. And he didn't mind that I stink like a goat. He didn't mind nothing. He didn't mind the filth, the body lice, nothing, the blood. He just got up to me and he put his arm on my shoulder. He said, if you want to be sober, me and Jean here will carry you to AA. You don't have to drink no more. And I said, are you sure? And he said, yeah. He said, no worry. It'll be right. Everything's good. He said, you come with me and Jean, and if you don't want to drink no more, you don't have to drink ever again. And she kept looking at me. She said, oh my God, look at him. And Sam, his name was Sam Cohen, little Jewish fellow, lovely little man. And he said to her, Jean, be quiet. He ain't going to hurt you. And she said, well, I know he ain't going to hurt me, but oh my God, look at him. And she kept that up all the way to the St. George Hotel. Oh my God, look at him. Well, I don't blame the poor thing, you know, because I was an apparition. I had no shoes on my feet. I had one sock. And I had a pair of pants that was all holy. I don't know how bad they were, but they were nothing. They were rags. I had a shirt on that was full of blood. It wasn't a shirt. Full of holes and filth. And I was just loaded with body lice. And he took me to the Hotel St. George in Brooklyn, and he took me up to the 17th floor, the mirror room. Now the mirror room has mirrors from that end all the way around, and I saw 200 of me. And I didn't know where I was. I said, I don't know what's going on. And they sat me down on a little ledge of heating that ran around the room, and I asked them later, I said, Sam, why did you not put me on a chair? Why you put me... He said, because we were afraid you were going to fall off and break your arm. You know, he said, you couldn't do anything. And he stood on one side of me, and Jean stood on the other, and they propped me up. And that was my first AA meeting. And do you know something? The minute I walked into that room, I knew that I was home. This is where I belonged. Because I found in that room that night what I had been looking for in the bottom of a bottle all my life. Somebody to understand me. Nobody ever understood me. My mother never did. My mother was always busy with 9 kids. My father never understood me. My wife never understood me. When I went to church, I didn't feel I belonged there. When I went to school, I didn't belong there. When I worked, I always felt like an oddball. I didn't belong anywhere in this world. I got to that meeting that night. I said, this is where I belong. I felt wanted. And the rest is conversation and coffee. That's all. Now, I hear people, they say, well, I don't understand this, I don't understand that. And I say, well, when I got here, I was a very sick individual. I didn't understand much of anything either. But one thing I did understand, I wasn't going to drink no more, period. That was it. And these people were going to help me stay sober. And I was so grateful that it was just fantastic. Now, I would like to say, that I went to AA, and everything was just hunky-dory right away, and I got a good job in a bank. Not true. I had trouble washing dishes in a Greek restaurant, because every third one I washed would go blip, and the guy would say, you break another one, you're gone. And I had trouble. And I had a lot of trouble. And after a while, they made me the coffee maker in the group. And a little while later, I was able to set up chairs and tables. And then Sam asked me about the steps, And I said, sure, Sam, you just tell me what to do and I'll do it. Because I wanted what he had. You see, he was a very quiet, gentle man. And he used to sit in a chair at a meeting, put his hands across his chest like that, and light a cigar. And that cigar would be stuck there, and it would start to burn down, see? And the ash would get that long, and that long, and that long, and it never fell off. And I used to just look at him, how does he do that? Because I was like a hot cat on a tin roof. I couldn't sit still for 30 seconds. I was going all the time, and I wanted what he had. And I told him, I said, Sam, I want what you got. Help me get it. And I didn't know then what I was really talking about. Because I hear people talking about serenity. I didn't know what the hell serenity was. In fact, I still don't. People say, in Brooklyn that Brennan there, he has a very aggressive humility and a very frantic serenity. That may be. But one thing I do know what I have, and that's peace of heart. Because I got no more garbage up in my head. And the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, the 4th step, straightened that up for me. You see, I used to walk around with a head full of garbage. Today I describe it as a head full of marbles. And that's the person that hasn't put the steps in his life, hasn't taken the 4th step. Every time he shakes his head, blah, and he goes to bed, he puts his head, blah, he can't sleep, he can't do nothing. The marbles get in the way, you see. And he gets very upset because when you get tired, you get nervous, you get distraught. You can't have any peace of heart that way. So I wanted peace of heart. And I got it. Because Sam told me one day, he said, well, now we're going to get busy on the 3rd step. And I said, I knew you'd get to that, you little devil. And I didn't have any working relationship with the guy upstairs at all. And I said to him, I said, Sam, why do we have to do that? I don't have any. And you know what he said to me? He said, you're an ungrateful Irish bum. Well, coming from a little Jewish fellow, that's... And I just looked at him, I said, what are you talking about? Why do you talk to me like that? He said, because that's what I tell you. You're an ungrateful Irish bum. And then he says, do you have any money in your pocket? I said, yeah, I got a couple of bucks. And he said, you got shoes on your feet, I see? I said, yeah, Salvation Army special. And he said, you got a lovely pair of pants too? I said, Salvation Army. And he said, you got a room? I said, yeah. I pay $4 a week. Very small. You got to step outside to change your mind. But it's mine. I pay for it. And he said, you're eating too. No more blood? I said, no more blood. Washing dishes. And when I wash dishes, they give me a meal. And he said, good. And who's giving you all these good things, Jack? I said, you. He said, no, you're wrong. All I did, the man upstairs sent me down to Barry to pick you out of the garbage, and I did with Gene, and we carried you here to AA, and we set you down so that you would be under the scope of the higher power. And the higher power from that day to this has taken care of you. And you got all these good things. You're not drinking, you're eating, and you got a room, and you're not sleeping in the streets. And he said, you are so arrogant and nasty that you don't even want to thank the individual that give it to you. Shame on you. And when he talked to me like that, I had to back up. Because he was right. I was an arrogant, egotistical bum. Irish. So I said, Sam, I love you. Don't hurt me. Tell me what to do. He said, okay. And I don't want no more out of you either. You do what I tell you. And he said, don't take the bus home tonight, walk. And he said, while you're walking, talk to your friend upstairs, because I want to tell you something, Jack. He loves you real good. What you are and what you were, he loves you real good. And he don't care about nothing that you did, but he loves you because look at you, what you got now, what he's doing for you. And I had to admit he was right. So I went outside and I said, hey, that little Jewish guy in there, to my friend upstairs, I talked. I said, a little Jewish guy in there, he says, you love me. And I said, I got to say, I can't find anything wrong with that. And I said, I don't know why, but you must. So I said, from this day on, whatever you want me to do, you let me know about it. And remember, I got a sick head, so get it in there hard. I said, I don't want to make no mistake. Whatever you want me to do, let me know about it. I'll do it to the best of my ability. And from that day to this, that's what's happening. And so when I get a call and I'm asked if I will come over here, yeah, I'll come. But I first had to go check with my friend upstairs, so I went down by the Indian Ocean there. That's where I take my 11th step. And I sat down and I counted my blessings. And when I do that, you see, the guy upstairs comes and he sits on my shoulder. And then I can talk to him. And I say, hey, because I have had a bad heart attack and I'm not too, strong in the flying department. I belong to the White Knuckle Club. And that's why I had to stay in Hong Kong, because when I get on the plane in Perth, I got to hold my breath till I get to Hong Kong. And that's a long time. And when I got on the plane in Hong Kong and went to Vancouver, it was almost a disaster because it's longer. And I had trouble there, but anyway, I went there and I just did all right. I did very good. I said to my friend upstairs that if you'll help me get over to Australia, or to the States here in Maine or wherever the hell I am. I said, if that's the way you want it, then I'll go. So I called back and I said, okay, we'll come. So we came. And while I'm coming up here, when we leave here, we're going up to Canada. And we got 3 meetings up there. We got to go to Thunder Bay in Ontario, and we got to go to somewhere else. And we got to go to Duluth, Minnesota, and we're going to make it. And we're going back home in about a month. Now, this is the way that I lived for the last 42 years. And along the way, I've been very fortunate. I've been able to help a lot of people. Not me helping people, but introducing them to the man upstairs, don't you see? Introducing them because I look to me as being left alive so that I could do what I could do. I believe very strongly in the preamble. My primary purpose is to stop drinking and help other alcoholics. And the guy upstairs uses me good. And everything turned out roses in my life because my wife came looking for me at a meeting, and she told me, I told Sam, I said, Sam, go see what she wants. She probably got another warrant. And he went out and he sat with her a bit, and he come back in and he said, no, Jack, she don't want to hurt you. She wants to talk to you. So I went down and I sat with my wife because I never was able to go back to home. And I was in AA about 5 years, I think, something, when I first got back home with my wife. And this night she said to me, Jack, not having much luck, raising the kids. I had the daughter and a girl and a boy. And she said, they don't give you much on welfare. And she said, why don't you got a room, why don't you come and sleep on a couch in the living room and give me what you pay for your room? And you can have a little something to eat out of the refrigerator when you come home at night. And that way you'll help me raise the kids. Well, I said, okay, all right, that's good, I'll do that. Because you see, I was into the steps. And what I had been doing up to that time was take a few dollars when I had it, put in an envelope and mail it to her. No big deal, just a few bucks to help because I owed her, I damaged their lives. And I was trying in the best way I could to make amends. So when this thing came up, I said, all right, I'll do that. And I was very happy to stay in a living room on a couch and be a boarder. And I used to watch my little daughter go to school through the windows, and I think it was lovely. And one day she said to me, isn't that couch getting a little hard, Jack? And I said, no. You see, the use and abuse of alcohol. Right? And then she started to make improper advances to me. And I got scared. And I got out of there and I went up to the Holy Mountain. That's in the Holy Mountain over there is Graymoor, Garrison, New York. That's a monastery. And I had a friend up there I went to school with. He was a monk. And I said to him, hey, the old lady's there. She's making noise like a wife again. He said, oh, that's good. I said, how the hell do you know? You're a monk. And he said, stupid, go back home. So I went back home. Hardest thing I ever did in my life, believe me. Because you don't know how many showers you take or how many baths you take, you can't wipe away the stink of prisons and hospitals and straitjackets and the Bowery. And I have to live with that to this minute. I have to live with that. I try to be clean all the time, and no matter how I wash or how did I scrub, I still have that little feeling that, I wish it hadn't happened. But you see, if it hadn't happened, then I wouldn't be here talking to you people. And the guy that I came here to talk to tonight, I don't know who the hell he is, but somebody here, he wouldn't be hearing me. See, my friend upstairs, he don't never send me anywhere where he don't want me, and he wants me in a certain place because there's somebody there that has to hear me. So I'm here doing what the guy upstairs wants me to do. And that's the way that it is. And when I went home with my wife that time from that monastery up there in the mountain, I sat down at a table that I wasn't used to. And my wife put food on the table and I couldn't eat it. And I couldn't cut my meat with my knife because I had 203 stitches in that part of my hand. One night my mother died. I went out at 4 o'clock in the morning from a bar in Greenwich Village, and I put my hand through the windshield of an automobile at the curb. And when I woke up the next day, my hand was a piece of meat with 203 stitches. And he told me I'd never use my hand again, but they didn't know about AA, don't you see? And I went, and when I got home from the Holy Mountain, my little daughter, she used to jump up on my knee, and she'd say, come on, I'll hold your hand for you. You hold the knife and we'll do it. And she taught me how to eat without spilling it all over myself and how to chew. And I got some choppers in my mouth, you see. And my guy in the back there, my son, he used to take me around in the basements of buildings where I worked and show me where I was going, because I was completely lost. And I didn't know where to go here, and I started to do maintenance work, and I started to do a little better, and things got better and better and better. And one day I was so completely overwhelmed with gratitude that I decided now that this is nothing but a miracle in my life. And that if God was good enough to me to let me get all these good things and my wife back again, that I was going to do the best that I could to change my nasty ways, because I was nasty. And then one day my wife told me that she's pregnant, and I had a third child. And I'm very proud, of course, of all of my children. But this little guy has never seen me drink. And, you know, it makes a little bitty difference. And, well, anyway, to make a long story short, he's now a doctor in New York. And he delivers babies, you see. And there's nobody in this room can tell me that Alcoholics Anonymous doesn't work. Nobody. Because evidence is here, standing, talking to you. A walking, talking miracle. And you know something? There's another miracle, and another one, and another one. And everybody out there that's an alcoholic is another one. I'm no different than anybody else, only maybe I got more knocks in the head than most people. Is all. But what I want to say to you is this, that if you're an alcoholic and you're here in AA, be very grateful. And it's a very simple program. It's not easy, but it is simple. And it starts up here in the head. Get rid of all the garbage so you can sleep at night. Get rid of all the garbage, put the steps into your life. When I wake up in the morning, the first thing that I do, I put my feet on the floor and I say, where the hell am I? And you know, just about the time you get used to the bloody bed, it's time to go home. And just about the time where you learn where the toilet is, it's time to go home. So my life is kind of confused. So when I wake up in the morning, I say, hey, where are you? But I won't move off that bed until in my heart that I've recited a little prayer that I picked up. And it's called The Secret. And it says here, I met my God in the morning when my day was at its best. And His presence comes like sunrise, like a glory in my breast. And all day long that presence lingers, and all day long He stays with me. And we sail in perfect calmness o'er a very troubled sea. So I think I know the secret, learned from many a troubled way. You must seek Him in the morning if you want Him throughout the day. And when I have that out, then I'm ready for anything that day. Nothing is impossible. Nothing. And if you got enough guts, you can move that mountain out there with a damn spoon. All you got to do is get busy and do it. And it's the way that AA works and the way that AA teaches you. And so I don't have any listening to anything, any moaning and groaning. I haven't got this, I haven't got that. Because the most important thing that was given to me the day that I walked in the door was the gift of sobriety. And there is nothing in this world more important than that to the alcoholic. And if you're here like that girl in the back with 2 days, she's as sober as I am today. And it's just a matter of time that she'll have her 42 years too. And I want to remind her then that I'll have 84. So that's my story. There's nothing much more that I can say except to tell you that I can handle anything that comes down the chute. And I tell my friend upstairs, whatever comes down the chute, that's mine. Good, bad, or indifferent, I want it. And I got it. Now one day here, about 15 years ago, or more, I don't know when, I was about to go to Texas to speak at another convention. And I was about to leave on a Friday. I like to get there early because I get my mind in shape for what I'm going to do. And the meeting was on a Saturday night that I was speaking at like this, after the banquet. And Wednesday of that week I began to get very nervous, jumpy, jittery. And my boss asked me, Jack, what's the matter? You got a problem? I said, no, I don't know what the hell it is. I feel like something's about to happen. And he said, well, if you want to take a couple of days off, it's all right. You work too hard anyway. I said, no, I don't want to get off. So I went home that night and I went to the airport and I changed my tickets from Friday morning or Friday evening to Saturday morning. And I went home and I told my wife, and she said, well, that's a kind of ridiculous thing to do. You're going to wind up in Texas. It's going to be about 6 or 7 o'clock in the evening. You'll have to rush to the place where the meeting is in a banquet. You won't have time to change or rest or shower. And you're going to be put up on a podium and speak. She said, you won't do a good job. I said, don't worry about it. That's the way it's going to be. I already changed my flight. And I thought maybe that the plane was going to go down, because I had this premonition. And she said, oh, man, you're a strange one. I said, well, I may be strange, but that's all right. That's the way it's going to be. So I went to bed that night, and I told her, wake me up in the morning because I got to get an early flight. It was Saturday morning. And I slept upstairs in Shenorock, New York. I had a little house, and there was a room there and a room here. And I slept here and she slept there because I find it very hard to sleep with anybody. I'm up and down all night long, and I'm afraid I'm disturbing someone, so I find it hard to sleep with anyone. So anyway, she looked at me over her book over a book I was reading. I was reading my little Bible there. And she said to me, Jack, you look so miserable. Is there anything I can do for you? I said, no, just go to sleep and be all right. I'm all right. So she said, okay. So she went to sleep, and I finally dozed off, and I went to sleep. And around about 3 o'clock, I heard somebody calling me. Now, when I take my ear out, I'm dead. I don't hear anything. You could explosions or anything. And I heard this voice calling, Jack, help, Jack, help. And I got up, and I went downstairs, and I looked around. There was nobody there. And then I still heard the voice. And then I went upstairs, and there she was behind the door. And she was having a heart attack. And I said, oh, my God. So I carried her downstairs, and I called the ambulance, and they came, volunteers. And it was bitter cold out. It was the middle of February. And she got to the hospital, and she asked me to come with her. Don't leave me now, Jack. Come with me. I said, no. I got to get on the phone again and get the doctor so he's there when you get there. See, we'll save a little time. So I said, I'll be right along after you. Don't you worry about it. So I got the doctor there, and I got in the car, and I went down, and I got to the hospital, and I only had on my undershirt. And I never forget how bitter cold it was, and I was shaking and trembling. And I went in. She was in intensive care. They had brought her up there, and I asked the doctor, I said, how is she? She said, oh, it's going to be all right. Be okay. So I sat down, and he said, you want a cup of coffee, Jack? I said, yeah, I'll have a cup of coffee. So I'm having a cup of coffee, and I said, can I see her? He says, no, not quite yet. He said, a little bit. So I sat there, and then all of a sudden, bells and bells. And he went running, and the nurses went running. And then he come back, and he said, she's dead. And I said, no. I said, you said she was going to be all right. He said, I can't help it. She's dead. So I went on there, and I said, doctor, do me a favor. Go back in and make sure. So he went back in, and he made sure. And I want to tell you something. I went down to the car that morning, and it was just about 5 o'clock. Coldest part of the night. And it was bitter, and there was ice everywhere, and I was stumbling, and I sat on a fender of the car, and I said to my friend upstairs, what are you doing to me now? And I was just about ready to start shaking my fist at the sky again. And all of a sudden my AA came over to me, and I came out and said, stupid, you had that woman back for 24 years, and you were never supposed to see her again. You got a new baby. Everything is good. Now the guy upstairs wanted him, and he took her. What are you complaining about? And I said, that's right. What am I complaining about? I got everything. And I don't look on dying anymore as a punishment. I look on dying as a reward. And there was a priest there later, and he said to me, Jack, don't pray for her, pray to her. Because you see, my wife was a Jewish lady. And when we got back together again, she was converted into the Catholic Church, you see. So I have nothing in this world that anybody owes me anything. And I'm so full of gratitude that if anybody anywhere needs anything, I'm just so happy to be able to do it. Because God has been so good to me. And that is my story, and I would just like to say that if anybody would like a copy of that little thing, little bookmark, and have it join me in the morning when you get up and say your little 24-hour book or what. And you see my wife after the meeting, she has a whole pocket full of them, right? And I would also like to say this, be careful going home, Because there's somebody out there needs every one of you people. Every one of you alcoholics is needed by somebody out there who is a duplicate of you, and he's just waiting for you to come and get him. So be careful going home. That guy's waiting on you. And be careful, and I like to leave you with a little Irish blessing. It says, may the roads rise up to meet you, and may the wind always be at your back, and may the sun gently warm your face and the rain softly fall on your fields. And until we meet again, may the good Lord hold us all in the hollow of His hand. Thank you, and God bless you.